You do not think that something like this will ever happen. It's the not knowing. Every night you go to bed, you're lying in bed and it's raining, you're thinking, is she out there on the hills in the rain?
On August the 12th, 2019, 47-year-old mother of two, Lindsay Birbeck, disappeared while out walking near her home.
She just said, I'll see you at 6. Love you. And that was the last time I saw her.
Despite nationwide press attention and hundreds of people involved in the search, Lindsay's remains were found in a shallow grave 12 days later.
The body was heavily decomposed. Quite shockingly, the killer had tried to dismember Lindsay's body.
The police came round and broke it to us. That's when everything just crumbled.
The chilling case gained national notoriety when it was revealed Rocky Marciano Price randomly targeted Lindsay when he was just 16 years old.
I went, 16-year-old? My daughter's 17, he's younger than my children.
Rocky, in my mind, is a very dangerous young man.
Some of his teachers said that he was non-verbal or didn't speak. He just had no emotion or no expression.
But what motivated this quiet teenager to kill a complete stranger in broad daylight and become known as the wheelie bin killer?
He's trying to, as a 16-year-old, find a way of expressing himself as a man. And poor Lindsay was the person who ended up dead.
It's hard to think Mum would have helped him, and he's murdered her.
Lindsay Birbeck was born and bred in Accrington, East Lancashire. When she was in her early 20s, she met her future husband Tim on a night out.
I saw her. She was tall, dark-haired, stunning, you know, just everything I liked. When she agreed to meet me again, I thought, winner. We got married 3 years after we'd been together.
18 months after their wedding, the couple started a family.
Stephen, born June 2000. In October 2002, Sarah was born.
My mum was funny, outgoing, courageous, yeah. She enjoyed sport, so she was very athletic and always enjoyed doing activities, walking, running.
As well as being a mother, Lindsay began a career teaching vulnerable children with special needs.
She was caring. She was like a mum to everyone. Like, she enjoyed caring for people and just helping others, really.
But after 20 years together, cracks began to appear in the couple's marriage.
We kind of drifted apart. What I wanted in life and what Lindsay then wanted in life were two different things. The conclusion was we'd split and get divorced.
By early 2019, Lindsay was embarking on a new chapter in her life. She had moved out of the family home and into a house in nearby Burnley Road, although she and Tim remained on good terms.
Got to be civil. There's no point shouting, screaming at each other, making things awkward.
Yeah, my mum and dad still got on. If my mum needed anything, my dad would be there to help her.
Just over a mile from Lindsay's new home, in an area known as Winnie Hill, lived a family from the travelling community. One of their 6 children was 16-year-old Rocky Marciano Price, who had been diagnosed with ADHD and autism.
Rocky was clearly somebody with challenges and with some health issues around autism.
Mild autism, learning difficulties. He didn't go to mainstream school. He was not academic. Some of his teachers said that he was non-verbal or didn't speak a lot.
Monday, August the 12th, 2019 was a warm summer's day, and Lindsay Birbeck had arranged to go shopping with her daughter Sarah, who'd just finished her GCSEs.
I messaged my mum because I needed some college uniforms, so I was starting college that year. Oh, is it all right if you come and get some college uniform and stationery? And she was like, yeah, sure, I'll pick you up at around 11. So she picked me up, and then we decided that I was going to have tea there with my boyfriend at the time. So about 3 o'clock, my mum dropped me off at my dad's, and she just said, I'll see you at 6. Love you. And that was the last time I saw her.
She was a mum, she was a sister, she was a daughter, and she was a friend to many people. She was just an ordinary lady living her life, and the sad reality for Lindsay is she went out to go for a walk and she never returned home.
On the evening of Monday, August the 12th, 2019, Sarah Birbeck and her boyfriend arrived at her mother Lindsay's home for dinner.
We got there for 6 o'clock. Obviously, because I thought my mum would be there, I didn't take my house key for her house. So I knocked on to see if she were going to answer, and she didn't answer. I tried ringing her a lot, but her phone was off. I thought that's a bit unusual. And I rang my dad. I said, Mum's not home yet. Is it all right if you pick us up?
And she said, the phone's not on. Car's outside the house. I haven't got my key, because I was expecting Mum being in. I don't know where she is. Was it all right?
So my dad came and picked us up. It was getting later on through the night, and I was getting worried myself because I thought it's very unlike Mum, because if me and Sarah were going up, she'll always be in.
Maybe she'd bumped into some friends and gone for a drink. But then Sarah said Mum wouldn't stand me up. Mum wouldn't turn the phone off to me.
So we got home. I messaged her, I said, where are you? Because we were there, but you weren't there, so I just wanted to know she were all right. But she didn't reply, and the message didn't go through to her phone.
Something's just not adding up.
So it was getting a bit later, so I messaged her best friend Sharon in case Sharon had heard from her. And she was like, no, I've not heard from her, but it's very unusual of your mum to do this. And she said, it might be best if you go to her house. So it got to about 11:30 at night.
Sarah and Stephen had a key for her house. We went over, went into her house, and she wasn't there.
That's when it began to feel real. We need to get the police involved. Even though it had just been a few hours, we knew something was up.
Lancashire Police, how can I help?
Hello, me ex-wife seems to have gone missing.
The call from the family raised immediate concerns because there was actually no reason for her to go missing. She'd been in contact with her daughter earlier that day. She'd made arrangements with Sarah to see her, and then she wasn't there. When the family had been in the house, it was undisturbed.
The phone was off, the car's there, nobody's just been over to her house now.
Has she done anything like this before?
No.
There was no notes, there was no messages, there was no signs of a disturbance, so Lindsay had left the address and she hadn't come back. But there were a number of different scenarios that could have happened as to Lindsay's disappearance. We knew that Lindsay was a keen runner and very fit, so Lindsay could have had an accident and could have been lying somewhere injured, or Lindsay could have gone out there to take her own life or to harm herself.
We knew my mum would not have committed suicide. And then it got to about early hours of the morning, a police officer came and asked for a photo of my mum. The beginning of a nightmare, really.
Less than 24 hours after she was last seen, Lancashire Police issued a press release that Lindsay was now a missing person.
Obviously, we liaise with the police every single day as reporters, and we just treated it like any other missing person appeal. We put the appeal out, stuck it on our website, popped it in the paper. We thought, oh yeah, she'll be found next week. There was nothing to suggest at that time that this was anything more than just a regular missing person.
We just had to find Lindsay, and that was the reality of it. It wasn't a criminal investigation, it wasn't a murder investigation from the outset. And we have an awful lot of people who do get reported missing, who after a number of hours and days turn up safe and well.
On the morning of Tuesday, August the 13th, the day after Lindsay had disappeared, police began a search of the local area, employing a number of specialist resources, including dogs, mounted police, and mountain rescue teams. That morning, Tim was at work when the true gravity of the situation began to dawn on him.
10 o'clock, I rang Sarah, you know, have you heard from your mum? She went, I'm up the coppice with Auntie Sam, my sister. And she said, there's full of police, there's mountain rescue, the fire brigade are up here, and we're all looking for mum. That's the point when I thought, oh my God, my daughter's actually up on the hill looking for her mum, and I'm sat here. So I got my stuff together. I said, sorry guys, I said, I can't leave my daughter looking for her mum.
When I told him about mountain rescue, that really made him begin to worry about my mum.
And what Sarah told me brought it home. I thought, this is serious. There's all these people out looking for Lindsay.
Soon, drones and helicopters were also employed to search the local area, and an online appeal group to find Lindsay quickly grew to 10,000 members.
When everybody realised that a local woman was missing, the people of Accrington came together. There was hundreds and hundreds of people putting posters up, putting appeals out on social media, and they had several searches and where hundreds of people turned up.
It's surprising the number of people who do go missing in our culture. But usually those people go missing but still use their bank card. They still might use their mobile phone. With Lindsay going missing, it was a completely different set of circumstances. She literally disappears. And therefore, that's quite a hard thing for the police to investigate. It takes a lot of patience and it takes time.
But despite the involvement of hundreds of people, the search for Lindsay so far produced no clues.
She just at that point appeared to have disappeared off the face of the earth. We couldn't track Lindsay via a phone. Her phone had gone off. And at different times we had different sightings across Accrington, across Lancashire. And again, all these needed looking into.
Then after 4 days, the police made their first breakthrough. Officers reviewing CCTV spotted Lindsay at around 4 p.m. on the day she disappeared.
We'd got CCTV that showed Lindsay walking down Burnley Road, and we know she turned off onto Peel Park Avenue, and that leads to the entrance to the coppice. The coppice is a large hilly area. It's got lots of pathways, it's got lots of trees, it's got lots of foliage. We knew from the family that Lindsay would quite often go running there and would run for miles, and she'd often go walking there. So everything from Lindsay's background and the CCTV was indicating that could be where she'd gone.
A few days before, she was complaining about a pain in the side of her head, like a migraine. So I thought, what if she's had a migraine at the coppice and she stumbled and fell over?
One of our big concerns in the first few days was actually that Lindsay could have been lying somewhere with an injury that incapacitated her, and she was lying there, which is one of the reasons why we got the mountain rescue, lots of police resources, the fire brigade, to go out and look for Lindsay.
By August the 19th, Lindsay had been missing for 7 days, and police brought in even more resources to help in the search.
It's when you start seeing things like the underwater team from the police, you become really anxious then. You're thinking, yeah, you know then that the police are thinking something's happened here.
We thought, what if we find something we don't want to find? Or what if we don't find anything? It was one of those, so we were both very scared, really.
Seeing Stephen and Sarah going through it made it worse. The kids, you can see it in their eyes, they're broken. Everybody were. Have a minute. No kid should have to go look for their mother like that. They shouldn't be doing it.
Police were now increasingly concerned for Lindsay's safety and considering all possibilities.
From my perspective, as the days went past, My feelings were that it was unlikely we were going to find Lindsay alive. That was the sad reality of it. What we needed to do was paint a picture of what was Lindsay doing that day and where were other people connected to Lindsay that day who may be able to help us with it.
A sad reality of our culture is that if a woman is murdered, 9 times out of 10, that woman was in a relationship with the person that killed her. Husbands kill wives, boyfriends kill girlfriends. Often you can determine who the perpetrator was simply by looking at the woman's social media and who last sent her a text message. So it's perfectly normal when something like this happens for the police to first suspect that it must have been somebody close to Lindsay who had committed the crime. Hence, you look at her nearest and dearest, her male nearest and dearest, to eliminate them from your inquiries.
And Tim was one of the people that fell within there.
I remember them taking fingerprints off us all and DNA samples off us all.
So obviously the police were asking me the questions because I'm the ex-husband. So, like I say, you'd have to be a fool not to think that you're being looked at, which they were.
Police spoke to Tim's employers to help build a picture of his movements the day Lindsay disappeared.
They went into Lucite. They've got me working on the shop floor all day. They've got me sat in the canteen at dinner time and brew times, and Security Lodge confirmed that I never left the site all day.
There was nothing whatsoever to show that Tim Birbeck could have been involved in Lindsay's disappearance, and actually we can show he was elsewhere throughout the time when Lindsay went missing.
After discounting Tim from their inquiries, the search continued for Lindsay, but after 12 days, hopes were beginning to fade.
I think it blurs into one. But you do, the first night you think, oh, what if she's just out and she's fallen? But then it got a bit later, the days were going by and you began to think something's not right here.
But at that time, despite the dozens and dozens of officers we had looking for Lindsay and doing all the inquiries, there was nothing to tell us what had happened.
Then, on Saturday the 24th of August 2019, a member of the public made a grim discovery.
There was a male out walking his dog in Accrington Cemetery, and he came across, well, his dog was paying attention to an area, he had a look within it, he then noticed a smell, he noticed something different within the area, and as he looked, he actually saw some plastic sheeting and then part of what he thought was a body. And the body was heavily decomposed, and unusually there was greater decomposition at the top on the head, and then that decreased as you moved down the body. Also, quite shockingly, the body had a significant injury to the right leg, which had occurred post-mortem, so after death it would appear that a leg had tried to be cut off, we believe, by a saw. So the killer had tried to dismember Lindsay's body.
We got a knock on the door late Saturday night. You could tell something was wrong straight away. You could see from the expressions on the faces and the moods they were in that something was seriously wrong.
When they came round and told us, that's when everything just crumbled.
So they came in, they sat down, and I think Leanne started to say, they've found what they think is a body.
That's when you realise that somebody has done this. That's when you realise there's a third party and it's murder. And the police said that on the day. They said we are now going from a missing person to murder.
Lindsay's remains were found naked, wrapped in plastic and carefully hidden in a shallow grave in Accrington Cemetery.
And there was a natural hollow within the earth that had been chosen to put Lindsay's body in. There was then about 18 stones of soil from around the cemetery placed over the body to conceal it. So it was very well constructed. It was done by somebody with significant capability to actually think and plan it. And if you think of the numbers of the public who've been searching in the area, the police, the fire brigade, mountain rescue, Lindsay's body had gone undetected for 12 days.
Once the police said they found remains, Steve and Sarah became angry. And obviously, nobody should have to go through anything like this.
I think we were all angry because my mum was such a big character. Everyone loved her. And she loved everyone, so I think we were all angry that someone could do something so sick towards somebody who everybody loved.
I asked the police, was it sexual? But because of the body and the condition, they couldn't say yes or no.
Sadly, because of the length of time and the circumstances, there was heavy decomposition to Lindsay's body.
The pathologist who ultimately examined Lindsay's body wasn't able to rule out there being sexual activity. And I wonder if it was sexual activity the killer was initially seeking as opposed to murder. To me, the murder itself seems to be a byproduct of the killer wanting to engage sexually with a woman.
The brutality and apparent randomness of the attack sent shockwaves through the local community.
It's a really challenging and difficult investigation. It's what we'd class a whodunit. We really need to act fast because now we know that somebody out there has killed Lindsay. They're still out there. There's still significant risk to the public.
There was an air of panic in the community. People wanted answers. Who had done this? Did people in the community need to be worried? Did this seem like it was going to happen again? Should lone females be worried? Should people be keeping the doors locked? It was a very sort of unnerving time, I would say.
But despite the condition of Lindsay's body, police were able to identify the injuries that led to her death.
What the pathologist was able to give was a cause of death, which was compression of the neck, which was as a result of some significant force and blunt trauma being applied to Lindsay's neck. That could have been by a kick, a stamp, or by use of another object, and she couldn't rule out that Lindsay had possibly been strangled as well.
A search of the area surrounding the grave also uncovered vital clues.
So Lindsay's body was naked, and the only item of her property or clothing we ever recovered was her trainers, which we recovered from a skip at the cemetery. The soles had been cut away from the fabric, but we could find Lindsay's DNA on them. We also found a saw and a pair of gloves within the foliage, not far from where Lindsay had been buried. And again, on those gloves, there was DNA from Lindsay and DNA from a mystery male.
Other experts were brought in to help piece together how Lindsay's body came to be buried in the cemetery.
We were aware, actually, that it was more likely to be what we'd call a body deposition site, so not where the murder had taken place, but somewhere where the body had been hidden. I think, interestingly, in this case, one of the things that assisted us was a botanist. So Lindsay's body was naked, but it had been wrapped within some plastic sheeting. And in between Lindsay's body and the plastic sheeting was foliage. So there was grass and there was a leaf. So the botanist came and had a look at the area where Lindsay's body was, and what he saw was actually there was grass present within the sheeting that wasn't actually within the area of the cemetery. So that showed us the body had been transported from elsewhere.
But it was a seemingly innocuous object that was about to become the centre of the investigation.
A number of people had noticed a wheelie bin within the cemetery that was unusual, and it was a blue wheelie bin. It had been seen within the area of where Lindsay's body was recovered, but because Lindsay was a missing person, it wasn't seen as being connected to it. The bin was empty and the bin had been removed.
Officers reviewing CCTV soon made a shocking discovery.
One of the officers reviewing CCTV from the area of Burnley Road finds that we've got CCTV image of a young male pulling a wheelie bin. And that really piques our interest. Suddenly, we've got a suspect now. We've got a male pulling the wheelie bin. We've got really good CCTV images of him that anybody who knew him will be able to identify him from. As the CCTV is reviewed, we find that that male pulls the wheelie bin and takes it onto the cemetery. And we also get that same male taking a wheelie bin in the early evening of Lindsay's disappearance onto the Coppice area. At that point, we believed it was highly likely it had been used to transport Lindsay's body to the cemetery. So that was the breakthrough we've been looking for and waiting for.
The race was now on to find the prime suspect, but police were initially concerned about releasing the footage to the press.
We had a real fine balancing act to do because obviously we want to find him and arrest him as soon as we can because we need to recover the evidence from him and stop him destroying it. You know, at that stage he's pulling a wheelie bin. He's a suspect, but there's certainly not the evidence there to charge him, so we need to understand that. And there is an element as well of protection for him because if we release that footage to the public and somebody recognises him and thinks he's involved in Lindsay's murder, he could have been attacked himself prior to us arresting him. So the decision I took and what we did was we thought, well, we'll try and identify him through police sources. So we had 24 hours where we were doing all sorts of enquiries within the police force and other police forces in the area to try and identify who this male was.
It was during this 24-hour window that police took a statement from a woman who was on the Coppice the day Lindsay disappeared.
And there was a middle-aged lady who came in to speak to us, and she told us that she'd been out walking that afternoon at about 3:30, and she'd become aware of a male, and she described this male, a young male, and he seemed out of place. He was there on his own. He was walking on a path that was parallel to her. He seemed to be walking very slowly. So she slowed down as well because she didn't want to end up walking in front of him. And she decided whichever pathway he took, she'd walk in an opposite direction. But she came to the other side of the coppice, and then she sees this same male again. And he's about 100 to 120 yards from her. She's genuinely frightened, and she starts to pick her pace up and walk fastly to get off the coppice. She's looking for something heavy, she says, to pick up because she thinks she may be attacked and she needs something to defend herself. So she just puts her head down and she walks at speed and she manages to get off the coppice and is safe. And when she looks behind again, this male has gone. What I think is quite chilling in this case is the pathway she leaves, and we have CCTV showing her leaving the area, just after 4 o'clock is the same pathway that Lindsay then subsequently walks onto. So within 5 or 10 minutes of this male following this lady, Lindsay walks onto that same pathway.
Although the woman was too far away from the male to be able to formally identify him, her description matched the male on the CCTV. So on the 27th of August, police decided to release footage to the press after first showing it to Lindsay's family.
He showed me the clip and he said, "Do you recognise this lad?" And I said, "No, I've never seen him before." The image they shown was just a young lad pulling a blue wheelie bin down the street. I didn't really think that Lindsay would be in that bin.
I think I did. I don't know about my dad and my brother, but I think I did. It's not normal to be wheeling a wheelie bin around, and you can see on the clip that it's got a weight in it.
I think it was about 35, 40 minutes later, it was on the TV on Granada Reports.
The CCTV images of the suspect made national headlines.
That became synonymous with the case then. There was an image that they'd released of what looked like a really young man in tracksuit bottoms pulling a wheelie bin along the road.
So we took the decision that we would release the footage at tea time because that's the time when most people will be at home watching the local evening news. And we were getting all sorts of different names and all sorts of different information. But after a couple of hours, we started to get a pattern.
The police had left here 5 minutes later, and then a minute later, my son's phone rang, one of his friends, and he says, I know that lad, but he's called Price. He goes to the same gym as me.
The name Price had been mentioned a number of times. A local gym had been mentioned, so we started to really focus and identify who the suspect was.
But within hours of the CCTV footage being broadcast, there was an unexpected turn of events.
To my surprise, I got a call to say there was a couple who brought their son into the front desk at Greenbank Police Station because he was the male on the CCTV.
On the evening of the 27th of August 2019, 16-year-old Rocky Marciano Price surrendered to police, accompanied by his parents. Price had an IQ of just 65, putting him in the category of extremely low intelligence. But he had no criminal history, although there were some reports of aggressive behaviour during his final year of junior school.
Rocky was a 16-year-old male, so he had issues with communication. His family told us he struggled to communicate, and he was autistic. We interviewed Rocky over a number of days, and he replied no comment to all questions asked, so he never said anything to us. In fact, he never said anything to us throughout the interviews.
The police said, we've got a lad in custody. And then as time went on, they said he's 16-year-old. And even myself, I went, 16-year-old? My daughter's 17. He's younger than my children. What's he doing?
Through CCTV footage, police were able to trace Price's whereabouts around the time of Lindsay's disappearance.
About 2:30 on the afternoon of Lindsay's murder, Rocky went onto the coppice. We then, about 4 o'clock, show Lindsay walking down towards the coppice. Within an hour or two of that, we then see Rocky leaving the coppice and walking down Burnley Road. You could see on the CCTV that actually the area of his knees appeared wet, and the top of his tracksuit top was partly pulled down and undone. You then see him a short time later returning to the coppice area with a rucksack, and he's on the coppice for an hour or so, and then he leaves the coppice with the rucksack, and then a short time later comes back with the blue wheelie bin, which he takes onto the coppice. And then later that evening, probably 10 o'clock, between 10 and 11 o'clock, he leaves with the rucksack, but the wheelie bin isn't with him. So within a short time of Lindsay's disappearance, and we say murder, Rocky was already about trying to hide the body. And that's what the CCTV was showing.
After 2 days of police questioning, Price finally came up with a story to explain his movements that day.
He produced what's called a prepared statement through his solicitor. It started off, I, Rocky Marciano Price, can say that I'm not involved in Lindsay Birbeck's murder. However, I was approached by a white male who speaks English, who offered me a large sum of money to move a body. So I've never seen this male before, I've never seen him since, but I did. It was in an area off Burnley Road. He showed me where the body was, and then I moved it, but I was not responsible for Lindsay's murder.
And he says, a white male has gone up to the coppice, murdered Lindsay. Nobody's seen him. He's left no DNA. But yet the first person he's approached is Rocky Price, and basically confessed to murder and asked him to move the body.
A normal person would walk up to a random person and say, I've just killed somebody. Here's some money, please will you move it? It's just, that won't happen, realistically.
But despite Rocky's outlandish explanation, police still searched for the mysterious white male.
You know, for 6 months I had a sergeant and 6 detectives scanning all the CCTV looking for this male. At the end of the investigation, I could confidently say there was no evidence whatsoever uncovered to show this male existed. And there was nobody else involved in Lindsay's murder.
In January 2020, the trial of Rocky Price began at Preston Crown Court.
Rocky pleaded not guilty. He pleaded guilty to moving Lindsay's body and hiding and disposing of Lindsay's body, but he pleaded not guilty to murder.
It was the first time the family came face to face with the person accused of killing Lindsay.
So we were in court number 1 at Preston, and Rocky came in and he was sitting behind a glass screen. And his body language was, he'd slouch in his chair with his hands in his pockets. To me, it was just like he were going through a routine. He knew what was going to be the outcome. We hated being in the same room as him. The hatred we felt for him was unbelievable. To see him with that attitude made it worse.
He came across as though like he had no respect for anybody in that room. He was slouched. He had no emotion in his face at all.
During the trial, Lindsay's family heard graphic details of the brutality involved in her murder.
The pathologist, a lady who's been in the job for 25 years, said she'd seen nothing like it in her career. She said the injuries to her neck was what she would say would have been caused by an industrial accident. So she said whoever did this was intent and wanted to make sure it was murdered.
During the trial, the middle-aged woman on the coppice couldn't formally identify Rocky as the man that followed her. However, crucially, through DNA, the prosecution were able to link Price and Lindsay to key pieces of evidence.
And we also had Rocky's DNA on Lindsay's trainers as well. And again, on those gloves, there was DNA from Lindsay and DNA from Rocky. We could also link Rocky through DNA to the wheelie bin, and we could link Lindsay through DNA to the wheelie bin. And regarding the decomposition of Lindsay's body, when we spoke to the pathologist, that fitted in potentially with Lindsay's body being stored in the wheelie bin and being stored upside down, which then accounted for the difference in the decomposition.
On August the 12th, 2020, exactly 1 year after Lindsay's disappearance, the jury retired to consider their verdict.
We all left the courtroom, went and got some dinner. We come back at 1 o'clock, 1:30. We sat around, and it was only like an hour and a half, 2 hours later, they said, jury's coming back in. And it was like, that's very quick. It was just over 3 hours.
It's an atmosphere like none I've ever experienced before at any murder trial, where it's just electric when the jury come back on a murder trial, and you've got that sense of anticipation as to what the verdict will be, and much to the relief of the family and myself and all connected, that the jury came back with a verdict of guilty to murder.
And as soon as he said that, it was just relief, really.
We all had a cry, didn't we? But it's like a sense of relief. You knew he'd done it, we knew he'd done it, and we just thought, justice is going to be served now.
Rocky was sentenced to life imprisonment with a recommendation he serve the minimum of 16 years due to the premeditated nature of his crime.
Because of his age, the minimum sentence was 12 years. But because it was premeditated, as in it followed the lady before Lindsay, and because of the length of time from when Lindsay went missing to being found, the class is aggravated. So because of his age, the premeditated and the aggravated, he got 16 years minimum to life. So the chances are he will never set foot out of jail for the rest of his life, which made me feel better.
Rocky, in my mind, is a very dangerous young man. He stalked 2 women during the afternoon, and having been unsuccessfully stalking one lady, within a short period of time he attacks and murders Lindsay. So, yeah, I believe he's dangerous.
You start asking yourself, why would a 16-year-old lad go and do this?
We have no insight as to why he's done it. I don't think we ever will.
The only person that can tell us what his motive was Rocky, and Rocky hasn't done so.
I believe that Price was in the coppice on that particular day because he wanted some form of sexual encounter with a woman. He's looking for a sexual encounter. When he stalks, therefore, the first woman that he identifies walking alone, that's giving him a sense of being powerful. She has a sixth sense about this is not a good encounter. And so she runs down the hill and is also looking for weapons, sticks, branches that she can pick up to defend herself. And that puts Price off. Think about this as a rehearsal. He has to slightly change the way that he would then approach the next woman that he sees walking alone. It's just unfortunate that the next single woman that he encounters when he's in that state of mind happens to be Lindsay Birbeck, and therefore she ends up dead.
Rocky Price may have been convicted of Lindsay Birbeck's murder, but despite the weight of evidence against him, certain people refuse to believe that he could be responsible.
Rocky's family haven't accepted that Rocky has killed him. They believe what he has said, and that somebody else did it.
Even worse for the family, there have been rumours on social media that Tim is in fact responsible.
There's a lot of people thinking on social media that my dad's involved with it, because obviously they've gone through a divorce. People look at that and think, oh, well, they must hate each other. But they clearly didn't.
Tim Birbeck was never a suspect in the investigation. We looked at Tim's movements along with other people within there, and what I can say is Tim was not there, was not present, and was elsewhere, and we could show that he was not and could not be involved in Lindsay's murder.
The police kept saying to me, just ignore him, Tim, they go away. But they do chip away at you, and it does hurt. We've been through absolute hell regarding this. And then you've got to deal with these people who are pointing fingers. It's despicable. I just want people to understand there's still a family picking up the pieces and trying to rebuild.
I don't think it'll be possible to rebuild after this, because like most mums in most families, they are a big person to have in your life. So it's hard not to have it there.
The Birbeck family have found it particularly difficult knowing that their Lindsay was killed by the type of troubled young person she was trained to help.
Lindsay, she worked in a school with special needs children. She'd help anybody, you know. So if some child had a problem, she'd take them under her wing, she'd help them, she'd nurture them. You can't comprehend it. It's just unbelievable.
She was just such a kind, caring person and wished nothing bad on anybody. Yeah, with Rocky being on the spectrum and my mum liking to help people on the spectrum or those who just need extra help, it's hard to think Mum would have helped him in any way she could have. And he's murdered her.
From the 9-1, switch that over, that's the young blonde. I was at the West Coast, now I'm in the East Coast. Saw you when